Okay, hello everybody. I'm Dana Deere. As she said, I'm the Assistant Director of the Agriculture and Natural Resources Department here at the Kickapoo Tribe of Oklahoma. And we can move on to the first slide. Let's see. And just a little background on the Kickapoo Tribe of Oklahoma. It's a federally recognized tribe here located in central Oklahoma in McLeod. Um, they have land in Potawatomi County, Lincoln County, and Oklahoma counties. I kind of go through the list of there's 1,153 acres of trust land, 4,900 acres of allotted land, and some small amount of individual trust land. And the environmental department here at the tribe conducted a natural hazard mitigation plan and a climate change vulnerability assessment. And I think these were done back in 2019. But at that time, they found that um, in this area, 35 drought events had affected the Kickapoo tribal lands from January 2007 through 2018. And so, since that time, though, there have been several other like drought events that have affected the tribe. A couple of years ago, we had a really bad drought, which they said was almost as bad as the Dust Bowl drought. Um, they found that this potentially impacts the loss of crops due to drought and then potential drop in groundwater levels and a decline in the tribe's four wells. Just a little bit more about the Kickapoo tribe. Um, they've done an excellent job at maintaining their cultural traditions and language. I've worked with them now. I started working a year ago, July, and I've worked with several tribes in Oklahoma, but I think they're by far more one of the more traditional tribes. They originated in the Great Lakes area, along the Sangamon River and Washbosh River, and they migrated south right now and all the way down to Mexico. There's a big history that I'm kind of leaving out with all that, but mainly right now they have the Kickapoo tribes of Kansas, Kickapoo tribe of Oklahoma, and Kickapoo tribe of Texas. And there are Kickapoos that also live in Mexico as well. And so right now, currently, drought and access to water are the main obstacles that our department faces as in creating a successful department. The drought has created poor soil conditions, and we know if it's created poor soil conditions for us as a department, we know that it also is affecting our tribal members who are trying to grow their own food as well. I kind of think about this Darwin quote. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change. And I feel that this quote applies to the Kickapoo as well to other tribes. And it also kind of applies to how tribes are going to adapt to the effects of climate change to keep producing food for their tribal people. Okay, we can move on to the next one. This department was created in 2023 to utilize KTO tribal lands to plant and grow and harvest culturally significant produce and other foods. We try to create avenues that pull the community together and try to pull in people who have the interest in learning and planting, harvesting, and reaping the benefits of gardening. This NIHB Climate Ready initiative greatly assisted our departments in trying to meet its initiatives this year on sustainability and growing culturally significant produce. Like I said, I began working for the tribe in July 2024. In February this year, 2025, we had administrative changes. I kind of took over the lead of the department. And this was early spring, so we started looking at the community and cultural gardens. And at that time, no groundwork had really been completed. So I started working on collecting soil samples and started working on trying to soil build and try to get biomass back into our soil that just had been depleted. Our department is 100% grant funded department, does not receive any tribal general funds. So we were so happy that we had this funding and that it came at an opportune time because all of our other funding was either diminishing or on pause with this current administration. So it allowed us to kind of stay active and continue with different active activities in the community. It also allowed us to really look at the effects of climate change and how we were going to move this program forward, and experiencing drought and limited access to water. And we knew if we were experiencing, the KTO tribal members were experiencing this as well. The soil in KTO country is either a sandy loam, and that's all of the um, areas close to the North Canadian, or it's this red dirt clay. Unfortunately, our community garden, where it was the spot that it was designated, was like this giant red brick of clay. It experienced lots of erosion. It didn't have any native plants or forbs that formed a large, root base to kind of inhibit the erosion. And then based upon surveys, we had a lot of interest in gardening classes and food preservation. And what we found, we do schedule classes, but what we found that works best is and I've learned all of the individuals who have great interest in gardening and helping us with our programs, is we seek out volunteers. And I kind of know the individuals that really want to volunteer, but we try to pull them in, and then they're learning while we're learning to develop our soil. And then we try to give them incentives. We had t-shirts made, or we give them part of the produce, or like with getting volunteers to help us bring in all of the manure and stuff like that. We, allow them to take some of the soil and manure home with them as well. But we get a lot of community participation here. We can go on to the next one. So we had a couple of objectives. The one was to host monthly community outreach events on plant distribution, establishing pollinator gardens with native Oklahoma plants, seed saving initiatives, soil building, trying to keep increasing biomass with using cover crops. And then all the while, when we pull in these volunteers, and a lot of them are elders, is gathering and that traditional ecological knowledge, and then also trying to document it in some way that we can share it with the community. Our other objective was to host classes, promote volunteers and participation in the community gardens. And we wanted to start a traditional Three Sisters garden technique. And we also wanted to distribute this food grown in the community garden, cultural gardens to our tribal community partners. We wanted to host food preservation classes. The KTO have traditional food preservation practices on drying pumpkins, but we wanted to kind of expand on that. We wanted to also provide, after we had canning classes and, drying classes, we wanted to provide two canning kits and two dehydrators to the KTO, the Kickapoo Tribal Library, so that after they take the classes, they can check these out. Um, on objective one, we really wanted to focus on distributing heirloom plants to be able to save the seeds. Also, with the pollinator gardens, We wanted to use native Oklahoma plants so we could save those seeds as well. Not only did we purchased some of the native plants. We have a really good nursery up close to Stillwater, Oklahoma, Bustani, and they focus on all native plants. But our hope is that we gather all those seeds so we'll grow those for tribal members to establish their pollinator gardens themselves for the next year. Wanted to focus on soil building, the use of cover crops, and then we also wanted to focus on their traditional varieties as well, creating seed stock from that because with the drought and not being successful at growing some of these, we were afraid that some of these would disappear or that we wouldn't be able to continue some of their seed stocks. And we also focused on heirloom varieties that we knew grew well in Oklahoma and that were, if possible, drought resistant. The history of the Victory Gardens and the heirloom seeds, I think, is really relevant today because the Victory Gardens were planted during wartime, World War I and World War II, to supplement the public food supply, promote self-sufficiency, and boost morale. And to me, this sounds a lot like food sovereignty initiatives and sustainability practices. So most of these seeds, were the seed saving predated war, and with the Kickapoos, their seed saving started during their migration. So we've been researching some of the seeds. Some of them maybe came from the north and the Great Lakes. Some of them they may had picked up when they migrated south. So trying to figure out where these seeds came from kind of also helps us with determining where and how we need to grow them. We also wanted to focus on providing good soil, not just being able to give these plants to the tribal members, but giving them access to good soil and natural fertilizer. Luckily, we did purchase a lot of soil and fertilizer for the tribal members, but we also sought out other resources. And luckily, I have connections with a horse barn, and we were able to get, dump loads of manure pulled in, and so that we can work with tribal members. We also wanted to provide them cover crop seeds to be able to utilize cover crops. And when they volunteered with us, they learned how we were using them so that they could use them at home as well. Last year, there were over, I think, 40 above ground beds built for the elders and tribal members. So we wanted to ensure that that soil was still good so they could grow the plants that we were distributing to them. Objective two, we kind of wanted to get involved in using the Three Sisters method on produce, wanting to use their three traditional seeds. We hadn't grown them together before, but we were wanting to try to see if we could use those and how it would work out. And then we wanted to promote food preservation. What do we do with all this food that we're growing? How do we preserve it for the future? And, with the Kickapoo, they traditionally dried their pumpkin because during their migration, they didn't have refrigerator systems, so they could carry this stuff with them. We collected a traditional black bean, which is kind of looks like a smaller lima bean. We collected red, blue, black corn, and some traditional pumpkin seeds. And we wanted to see if they would benefit from intercropping or companion planting. I visited like the Cherokee Seed Bank a couple of years ago, and I told that they said they didn't do Three Sisters because usually their beans and squash and corn don't like to grow at the same time. Like I said, rather than doing traditional classes, we would seek out volunteers that had shown an interest, bring them out. I'd send out an email or send out a request to all the people. I apologize, that's my phone. To all the people that were interested and trying to give them incentive, giving them part of the produce as well. We can move on to the next one. So on methods and deliverables, like on March 12th, we held a seed distribution, distributing potatoes, onions, other traditional seeds that we had gathered last year. That was over to over 50 tribal members. On May 9th, we had a plant distribution and we distributed over 1,000 vegetable and herb plants to the community. Um, May 9th, we started an elder tomato garden, which was behind the Elder Nutrition Center. That was set up so that they could just come out and help take care of it themselves, and then also pick tomatoes when they wanted. We planted two pollinator gardens, one kind of in the focal point in front of their multi-purpose building, and then one at the CRCC gym. Both of those are used by the community quite a bit. And then in July, we planted a pumpkin patch along with some okra and more squash for kind of a fall. We held salsa making and canning classes in October. And then luckily we have our Kickapoo Tribal librarian is also a master canner and a master gardener. So that's where we held the classes. Luckily, they have a new building with a big, nice new kitchen that we're able to utilize for those things. We can go into the next one. And then on the second one, on the method and deliverables, um, we decided to use like this method that was used in the Great Lakes, which is, and you can kind of see it over to the on the side of the slide. You can see the corn growing with the mounds. The beans were just planted in there. I think I have some more photos of them, but we just put all this organic matter in mounds, and then you can see some of the clover trying to come up, but we tried to plant cover crops in between there while we were waiting to put in the pumpkin plants as well. We wanted to use this because it's no tilling. Because we have a problem with not having a lot of biomass in our soil, we wanted to use this more sustainable form of agriculture. And we also want to reestablish some of the traditional ecological knowledge that was used traditionally before the Kickapoos migrated. Um, we had to do a lot of soil testing, a lot of soil building prior to planting. We have, of course, sought out volunteers. Luckily, this community garden is located to the walking trail that the Kickapoo have. So a lot of times I just get people walking over. When can we help? What can we do? So it was nice having it close. We had many volunteers to come out and help us plant. We also had to end up replanting some of our traditional pumpkins because even though we've experienced so much drought, this spring was one of the rainiest springs we had. I think we had 45 days straight of rain, and then we also had some flooding. And our first batch of traditional pumpkins that we had planted were sitting in about 2 inches of water for a couple of weeks, so we lost that. So we had to immediately plant. We grew the blue corn and the traditional black corn. And mainly we grew that for seed stock and distribution. The KTO have 12 traditional homes that those are passed down matrilineally, and we provided those homes with a supply of corn that they can use for offering. And we'll give out the rest of that corn in our next seed distribution in the spring. And then also we saved a lot for seed stock because we're going to grow large fields and hopefully have that ready for a green corn dance next spring. We also had a traditional pumpkin distribution on October 14th. And while we were distributing those, luckily the language department is next to us. We opened up the rooms. I supplied all the cutting boards and knives, and people began to like cut up their pumpkins. They cut them in little like pieces and they kind of dry them. They call them cowboys, and they hang the pieces over the line to dry them. I kind of have a photo to the left. They kind of set up their own little things, and then there's some showing how they traditionally dry them on the lines. We also have some photos of the traditional corn that we grew. So we tried to the traditional pumpkins are important with their ceremonies and their feast. And we've gotten so many compliments and thank yous because usually well, in the past they've had to go purchase these. And they're usually bought by the pound and they end up being really expensive for the tribal members. We had t-shirts created that were, cultural and community garden t-shirts. We tried to hand those out to tribal elders and those that participated and volunteered and helped us. The one thing we didn't have good luck with were the beans. Not many of them grew. Where I did receive some more seeds for those just this past week. We're hoping that this next batch will grow. We have a little bit for seed stock, but then we're kind of looking, maybe that bean seed won't grow because it's kind of a northern seed. We might have to plant that a little earlier. The corn and the pumpkins really like the heat, but the beans did not. We also grew over 200 pounds of potatoes and 100 pounds of onions that were distributed to the tribal elders as well. And let's see. Um, and in talking about this Three Sisters, luckily, my son was conducting and finishing up his PhD, and he wrote his dissertation was investigation of the plant and microbial ecology of indigenous cropping systems of Wisconsin. And he worked with the Oneidas up in Wisconsin. And usually they talk about companion planting with the Three Sisters is, the corn, the beans provide nitrogen for the corn provides a place for the beans to grow, climb up, and then the squash will provide shade and the leaves provide shade to keep it cool. But in his studies, what he found is that there's a lot, when those three are grown together, there is an increase in the microbial activity increases. So you get more yield growing these together than you do growing them separate. The development of microbial um, matter also helps them with fighting pathogens or bad bacteria and also pests. So I was lucky to kind of have that to use in support of trying to, do the Three Sisters to help build our soil as well. I think that's it. We can move on to the next one. So the results, I think one of the best things is when we get the volunteers out there and we start having this 101, or when there's photos of the plant distribution and the elders and talking to them. And this year we were also able to provide them soil and manure and talk to them about building their soil. Unfortunately, we didn't have the money to be able to pay for soil testing for all of them or to be on site to go. I'm hoping that was just due to a lack of manpower, but I'm hoping next year we can be a little bit more hands-on. We also provided cover crop seeds and discussed with them, like when they're not growing, it's nice to have this cover crop to decrease erosion, also to keep moisture in the soil and that's depleted during drought, and also to increase their biomass. The place we planted the pollinator garden, it was a big round planter. There's some photos in there, but it hadn't been planted, they said, like in over 20 years. And we also planted another pollinator garden. And those, we got so many compliments, plus we were able to see all the butterflies coming through and all the pollinators, which I think also helped our gardens as well. Um, our tomato garden kind of, or the elder tomato garden kind of slacked in production, but I go to the nutrition center and I'm able to talk to some of the elders there, and they helped us with, we need eggshells because they had a blossom mold on the bottom, or they need eggshells. I brought in some bone meal, so we all worked to try to get that working again, the tomatoes growing as they should. We also, the food preservation classes were well attended, and we used, for both the traditional and modern methods of preservation. One of the issues we had was access to water. We had no access to water at our community garden or our cultural garden, but we were trying to get two wells installed at the beginning of the year. However, due to all the rain and flooding, we really didn't get those in till like late summer, and we're now having those converted to solar water wells. So hopefully next year we won't have to deal with that issue. All in all, we had a better growing season than last year. Um, you can go on to the next one. We're hoping next year with the water wells, we'll have a better one and we'll have a bigger seed stock as well. And we've learned from the lessons this year. Um, by planting the three sisters, we kind of figured out how these plants wanted to grow. We know now that the beans probably might have to pick another bean. They really didn't respond well when it got really warm. They kind of like a cooler weather. Um, but we were able to collaborate with other to share our knowledge with these other departments. And there's the traditional bean that we were trying to grow. There's a photo of the three sisters when the beans finally came on. And then there's some of the pumpkins that they were cutting up for their drying. Um, we got a lot of good feedback on being able to provide them at least with their traditional produce of the pumpkins and the corn, at least. So you can move on to the next one. And this is some of our photos of some of the events. The middle photo, that is let's see, that's Cecilia Valdez, and she's a tribal member. And she came to our seed distribution and got the seeds, and she kept up with me and kept in contact. And she's one of maybe a handful of tribal members that always reach out and show us their progress. And she did so well with her pumpkins this year. We were so proud of her. She entered a couple in the state fair and won, several awards with her pumpkins. And then there's also a photo of when we donated the dehydrators and the canning kits to the library. There's photos during our plant distribution. There's photos of us putting together the elders. We bought above ground beds, those little galvanized metal beds, and we were able to set up two of those for the elders tomato gardens. Um, I think all in all, we were as successful in establishing a good seed stock of traditional produce, except for the beans. We've received more beans. Hopefully, we'll be able to do better than that. We're working with the Kickapoo Tribal Library to catalog our heirloom seeds for checkout, and then also are taking donations for seeds. So we'll have a seed bank here, and then also one for the community at the library. Right now, most of our our produce is distributed to tribal elders through our nutrition and Title VI program. We also started a food bank here a couple of weeks ago. So any extra produce, like I just went out and picked a bunch of pumpkins from the pumpkin patch to save them from the first freeze. We will be supplementing those hopefully within the food bank as well. So our mission is always to tribal food sovereignty by using sustainable agricultural practices. And I think this grant, this NIHB funding allowed us to like, here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to address this drought till we need the soil build. And where before kind of activities were just kind of randomly planned. And this way we had like goals to set with us and then also with the tribal members. Um, we also, we try to focus on sustainable gardening. We're also natural resources side, so we're trying to preserve our natural resources. Um, some of the allottees have some of the best farmland in this area, all located on the North Canadian River. It's our hope in the future that we can work with that land on sustainable practices. So it's good getting the all the tribal members in to kind of see what we're trying to do. Many of the tribal members, as like we did, hadn't done much soil building. So it was great to be able to use this funds to get good soil, build good soil, and then get access to natural fertilizer. I think what was great, the best part is as we learn sustainable agricultural practice and how to combat climate change, our tribal members were learning along with us. And the last slide is just a thank you. Here's a shot of our beautiful pollinator garden, a shot of the sign for which down at the bottom we said a thank you to the NIHB for our beautiful pollinator gardens, some of our beautiful tomatoes that we're growing. And then that was our canning class when we were waiting for all the jars to pop to make sure that they had sealed properly. But I thank you. I forgot to put my contact information in. I'll put it in the chat if anybody has any further questions from me, but that is my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we do have one question in the chat from Luce about feedback on the implementation of cover crops.
Yeah, that you know,
Oh, you're muted, Dana.
there you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Um, the question was what was the feedback? I think the feedback, trying to explain to them how the cover crops help with keeping out the weeds and then also keeping moisture and putting down, keeping the erosion to a certain level. Um, we were able, and then, but exp the one thing, the feedback I think is good. Was good. It's just, I think we're going to have to work further to kind of explain, earlier in the year, you need to use more of the clover and the kind of the radish type family, and later in the year, kind of use more of the legumes. But I think it's a process that we're all learning, but from individuals who were experienced gardeners, I think they were very appreciative.
All right, and I see no more questions or comments, so we will now move to Miss Clara, who's gonna talk to us about the Lummi Nation's sailfish clam.
Thank you. Were you going to share my presentation?
Yes, ma'am. Do y'all see it? Oh, you do not see it. I am only looking at it. Now you all see it.
Great, thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Clara Schlieman, and I'm the intertidal shellfish biologist with the Lummi Natural Resources Department at the Lummi Indian Business Council. I work on behalf of the Lummi Nation. And yes, we are shifting gears into the marine environment. I wanted to start off with where the project is taking place. It takes place within the Lummi Reservation, which is located in the northwest corner of Washington State within the bioregion of the Salish Sea. Next slide, please. The reservation is outlined here in yellow. And within the Lummi community, intertidal shellfish, primarily clams and oysters, are a key ceremonial, subsistence, and commercial harvest species. And within the Lummi Reservation boundary, there are two primary beaches where harvest occurs. Lummi Bay is on the left, the bigger blue highlighted area, and then Portage Bay is on the right. And these two beaches they have very different habitat. Lummi Bay is a mixture of sand and mud and mainly hosts manila clams and butter clams, while Portage Bay is quite a rocky beach and has a much higher diversity of intertidal shellfish. So there's manila clams and butter clams, but there's also oysters and cockles and mussels. Clam harvest within the community is highly accessible due to the low cost of gear and the relatively low cost of travel to the harvest areas. Access to these traditional foods is immeasurable, and it's realized within the Lummi saying that when the tide is out, the tables are set. Next slide, please. So now with the changing climate, there have come a lot of threats to harvesting clams. And this current project focuses on harmful algal blooms, or HABs, I also may refer to them as. And HABs produce biotoxins, which is a toxic substance produced by a living organism, and in this case, it's from algae. These toxins concentrate in shellfish tissue and become toxic to consumers at elevated levels. Within Washington State, paralytic shellfish poisoning is one of the primary biotoxins of concern, and the closure levels are around 80 micrograms per 100 grams of sample, so it doesn't take a ton. Next slide, please. Just wanted to give a little bit of background about biotoxin testing in Washington State. Here's a little timeline. Testing started in 1930, and after that time, there were a few deaths. And as testing increased throughout the state over time, there were still some illnesses, but over time they became fewer and fewer. And the tribes and the state work together to routinely test beaches throughout the Sound now and to diligently close beaches that have elevated or unsafe levels of biotoxins. Testing ensures beaches are closed, and when they're unsafe, protects people from consuming shellfish that could harm them or make them sick. However, the frequency and duration of these closures has been increasing over the past decade. The next slide, please. And biotoxin events, which are increasing in frequency, intensity, and duration is due to the warming air and elevated water temperatures. This presents a health risk to the community, and it also reduces opportunity for individuals and families to gain their sustenance from this cultural resource. Next slide, please. So the Lummi Biotoxin Program has been growing over the past 7 years, which it has certainly come a long way, and that is in no small part to the help that we have received from NIHB over the years. The current project focuses on building a more robust biotoxin monitoring program, and we wanted to do this through optimizing seasonal biotoxin sampling frequency through research and analysis of the data we've collected over the last 7 years. to also do routine biotoxin sampling, and then also to make sure we're broadcasting closure information through Lummi Natural Resources community Facebook page, the text message system that we have, as well as tribal government websites and Lummi community newspaper. We also developed a brochure that summarizes the biotoxin monitoring program, as well as outlines what HABs are and how they're dangerous or can be dangerous. Next slide, please. So the analysis of the data that we have, we realized that we had to adjust our sampling frequency. And so previously, we were sampling weekly, doing biotoxin sampling weekly between about either mid-May or early June through mid-September. So that's just a few months. And the results showed us that we needed to increase our weekly sampling time period to begin in about mid-March and extend all the way through mid or even late October. So this is quite a significant increase in the amount of samples that we have. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to give a shout out to my team that has been working on this project with me. I'm very fortunate to have a dedicated team. On the left, we have Janessa. She's our part-time field technician, and she is the one who has been completing all of the biotoxin sampling. So she's out there in the field collecting the shellfish. And she's now doing this at nighttime because all of our low tides are now during the night, and that will continue into early spring. She also changes the closure signs whenever the beaches become unsafe to harvest. On the right, we've got Emily. She's our junior shellfish biologist, and she's in charge of the community messaging through the community Facebook page, news articles, and also the text message system. She also updates our website as needed to reflect changes in open and closed status. And she assisted me with the HAB brochure, which I think looks pretty fun. Next slide, please. These are just some screenshots of what our messaging platforms look like that we routinely use to disperse information into the community. On the left, we have the Lummi Harvest Management Facebook page, and there's a snapshot of an example of one of the closure notifications that we would have sent out, as well as a link to the website. It's very useful to be able to send out that information together. And then on the right, we have a snapshot of what our text messaging system looks like when it goes directly to people's phones. We'll share a notification of a closure or an opening, and then also are able to include that link to the website for more information. Next slide, please. This is the website, and it is accessible to anyone through the Lummi Nation webpage. It's great to be able to disseminate information through Facebook and the text message system, but with the website, we can include a lot more in-depth information. We can have HAB resources so people can learn more about PSP and paralytic shellfish poisoning and the effects that it has, as well as maps of areas that are unsafe to harvest. Next slide, please. We have learned through this project that we need to be reviewing sorry, my light went off. All right, it's on a timer. We learned through this project that we need to review biotoxin data more regularly to ensure that we're capturing all of the time during the year where biotoxin levels could be elevated. It certainly takes, another thing we've learned is that it certainly takes a team to ensure that our biotoxin program is running smoothly, from coordinating the biotoxin sample times to the sampling itself, changing signs, and then making sure we get the messaging out to the community in an efficient manner. So based on this project, we will be updating our biotoxin sampling protocol to reflect that increased time where we need to be conducting weekly sampling instead of fortnightly. And since sampling has now jumped from weekly for a 4-month period to about 7 weekly sampling for about 7 months, we will also need to seek some additional funding to cover that increased cost to our division. Next slide, please. I wanted to end with a little example of the brochure that we produced as part of this project, and leave it up while there's any questions or if there's time for questions. Actually, it looks like we're coming up on time, so we will probably forego questions and move on to Pam. But I'm happy to get any questions in the chat. Thank you.
We do have a few questions, but in respect for time, I think we will move on, but we'll make sure to send them over to you that we can get them answered to the right folks.
Great, and I will put my contact info in the chat because I also forgot to include it in my slide.
All right, I think I will get started. Good afternoon. My name is Pam Thunder. I am an environmental health program manager in the Department of Health for the Ho-Chunk Nation. A little bit about the Ho-Chunk Nation and where we're located. We are located in Wisconsin. Our service area for the health department is roughly 15 counties in the state of Wisconsin. The Ho-Chunk Nation has smaller tracts of land that they have, and they're spread out over a larger jurisdiction. So we don't just have one tract of land. So that makes some projects and programs a little bit more challenging. I've been with the Ho-Chunk Nation Health Department for a little over 20 years, doing quite a few different things within environmental health. And our project is going to be a little bit different than the previous two projects in we are looking at climate change and preparedness is one of the programs that we have within the health department, and then also assessment. So that's what I'm going to be kind of going over real quick. Next slide, please. So our goals for this project were to evaluate tools for assessing the community needs. So one of the tools that I wanted to really take a look at was the CDC's BRACE framework. It's a very comprehensive assessment tool if you're looking at doing a community assessment. I wanted to have a team kind of put together to see how this framework would work within a tribal community setting. We wanted to take a look at climate impacts, vulnerabilities that also we are assessing through our public health emergency preparedness program. So kind of comparing the two, disease burden, and then public health interventions, and the development of a more comprehensive climate adaptation plan. We also wanted to do an inventory of the health department specific vulnerabilities and what projects or initiatives that the health department has done related to climate. And we learned a couple different things when we did that, that we're doing a little bit more than what we thought, and that it's such a broad topic, so which has its own set of challenges. The last kind of goal of our project was to join state and local partners in Climate and Action Together, or CHAT, to build climate and health literacy through coordinated messages. So CHAT was a way that we leveraged getting a broader message sent out, or kind of piggybacking on what other people are already doing to get kind of blast messages out. Next slide, please. So some of the activities in our first goal was to form first a collaborative team within the health department to really take a look at those frameworks and assessment tools. So we tried to take people from different programs within the health department. We had our environmental health team represented, we had public health, we had our quality team, we had community health, and clinical health represented. So we tried to get a wide range of people on board. And I listed out a few of the different assessment tools that we looked at. Kind of had homework for each of our meetings. We met monthly and we utilized that time really to go through some of these assessments. We looked at capacity within the health department, capacity within the tribe. A lot of the assessments were very comprehensive and would involve us taking a look at not just the health department, but several other sectors of the government structure. And so kind of understanding what our capacity would be within the health department. Some of the assessment frameworks, we knew we just would not have the capacity to do. The one that we really kind of honed in based on what our capacity was within the health department and really wanting to focus on what health could do potentially, we really looked at that CDC climate and health planning worksheet, preparing and coordinating community response. That was the one that seemed to fit based on conversation, based on work that's already been completed. That one seemed to be the most applicable for us. Next slide, please. So in the second kind of goal that we had, some of the activities that we did, we had that committee that was assembled. We did a full inventory of all the different climate projects that we actually have done within the health department, and realizing it had a wide scope. So within our environmental health team, we have an environmental side of the house, we have environmental public health, we also have our water utilities out of our division as well. So we were looking at like capacity for our water and sewer systems for community level, as well as what we've done with our on-site or individual wells. We have over 500 individual wells, private wells. So we really took a look at the capacity and the programs that we've implemented through those. We've also have an air program within our program. And we also have kind of a wetland program. So we really were taking a look at all of the different programs and initiatives that through over the years that we've done, and really getting an inventory on what's been going on. And then taking a look at that through public health, through clinical, through community health, what they've done related to climate change. So the intent of this is to have a repository that programs could go to if a funding source comes up, if they want to apply for some funds, that they have kind of a resource to look at. Oh, this is what we've done. These are projects we've completed, so they don't kind of have to reinvent the wheel. We can actually start with something. Our monthly meetings we use to assess those tools and really come up with the best recommendation based on what we all saw. And then we also had to develop and document that tracking program so that we could keep track of what we were all doing across all the different divisions within the health department. That too could be utilized as a template across further governmental entities if that is something that other programs were interested in doing. So making it easy to use, easy to access. We just had a shared drive and essentially a spreadsheet, and that's kind of how we started. It could get fancier and a lot more extensive, but we wanted to start with something small that everybody would have access to. Next slide, please. Some activities in our third goal, that was joining chat. We attended quarterly meetings. We were able, when we officially joined, we were able to get access to template documents. And chat is a coalition that was developed. The state is the one that's kind of facilitating this, the state of Wisconsin, DHS specifically. And They had a few different steps, and we were lucky enough to join right at the very beginning. So they had done some research in figuring out, like, what can we do for messaging around climate change, and how is that going to land within our communities. Wisconsin is kind of has a wide range of like size communities. So we have very urban areas like Milwaukee and Madison, and we have very rural communities. The further north part of Wisconsin is very rural. There are not a lot of cities. So trying to get messaging that applies to a wide range of people. So they did all of the kind of digging into how do you craft and create those messages that hopefully that they're going to land in a way that resonates. And so it was the idea to have templates that you could, use. You could modify them to fit your community. They also had guidance documents, and if you have a community that's mostly, older individuals, here are some things that you could use in your messaging that might help you craft a better message. If you have a younger population or more urban population, maybe this is a better route. So the tools were really easy to use. You could modify them. You could put your own pictures in. You could use their stock pictures. You could use their links that they already had. You could add your own. They were very easy to use. We developed an educational board to take to our community events. One of the things that we were talking about based on our community health assessment was health literacy. This has been something that the health department has been working on over the years, is improving health literacy. And so having that educational board with kind of just the basics of what is climate change, what does that mean related to your health, and some direct impacts potentially to health. We also developed a PowerPoint presentation, and we shared it at our Partners in Parenting meeting. Community Health has these Partners in Parenting events that are set up every month. They have different topics. It's usually a wide variety of topics that they cover. And we were able to present at that a couple of times to share that information. It was really well received. People were very interested in learning more. So I think we took that as an area of opportunity that we could continue sharing more information and more education. A little bit later on, we're going to learn that we kind of learned that's an area of need based on feedback. And then we developed a survey. And the two things that we're really looking at or focusing in at was risk perception and climate and health literacy. So I worked with our epidemiologist to come up with a survey to kind of gauge what is the risk perception of our community, so we could further kind of dive into, well, what should we focus on? If funding is out there and available, what should our programs be focusing on that's important to the community? And then at what level are we at? Like with health literacy and climate, what level do we need to, or maybe our community really is very in tune with this and really has a high level of health literacy related to climate. Maybe we don't need to cover that, which is great, and we can move on, but maybe there's an area for improvement there. So we really wanted to kind of see what we need to do for the next steps. Again, we knew that we weren't going to actually get there, but at least this is laying the groundwork so that down the road somebody could potentially pick it up and utilize it to continue programming or projects. We were able to get 52 surveys done during the course of the grant period. We kind of intend to continue doing that and getting more feedback because we're hoping that if we're able to continue with the educational piece and exposure piece, that maybe we would see some changes in that. So we're looking at trying to do that at regular intervals to gather some more data to make that more complete. Next slide, please. A few of the lessons that we learned through the course of the project, partnerships and resources. So I kind of mentioned quite a bit about our chat coalition. They were very helpful in developing those messages. They did all the legwork in looking into how to develop a strategy and put that all together, which is great. They're also looking at, so the beginning part of that strategy is kind of that initial education piece, which is what we got in on, which is great. But there's other pieces that are going to be coming in the next year for their second and third phase. And it gets from the education to actually interventions and things that we can do in our everyday lives. That's the intention. But it's broken up into 3 different phases. So that partnership was really, really helpful for us. Another partnership was and resource was Healthy Homes Air Matters. And this is something that I had heard a presentation, probably a year ago on. And I thought it was awesome. They specifically work with tribes, and it's a great educational resource. They have materials that relate to air quality. It's focused on the home. They have a lot of green products. And the thing that I really like about that is, one, the cost is very reasonable. The kits are amazing, and it has all of the educational materials in it. They come in, they have QR codes so you can watch little videos. You have all the written material, and the staff are really great about going through all of the educational materials with us to kind of show us how everything works. So that was a wonderful inner kind of relationship and resource that we found. The CDC Climate and Planning Worksheet was probably the most helpful in that assessment tool. What we really identified was our capacity struggles. Understanding that our true assessment really is very, very broad, and we are only a small puzzle piece in that assessment. And we recognize that it would take a lot of buy-in from other entities within the government to really get that full assessment completed. Next slide, please. A couple other really great things that we stumbled upon, tick kits and first aid kits. So those are some of the things that we purchased through these funds and distributed to our community. The tick kits and first aid kits were also placed in our public health vending machines, and they were the most popular items in the vending machines. And they got restocked quite often, so that was wonderful. We also partnered with our annual rabies program that we do within environmental health, and provided information and tick kits during those rabies vaccinations. We typically do around 300-ish animals during our annual rabies event. So we do have a lot of people that attend. So that was a really good partnership right there. And then we did the Healthy Homes kits, education, and the surveys during our block parties. They're kind of like health fairs, but more fun. And that was a really great setting to get some of the interaction and feedback with community members. So that was a really good lesson learned on how to get that information distributed out there. And then the 2 little images that are on this slide was a resource I used in the Partners in Parenting presentation. And it's around climate change and climate change education in children. And if you have not watched this, I'm a big NPR nerd. I love listening to NPR. And I learned about Susie Hicks, the climate chick. And if you have not watched them, I highly recommend that you go and watch it. It is super cute, and it has wonderful education that's super accessible. This would be a great thing to share. I was thinking about this with our Head Start kiddos. This is right up their alley. So I highly recommend, if you haven't checked her out, please do so. Next slide, please. These are just a couple of things that we developed through the grant program. We worked with our language division to come up with a couple of flyers focusing on those tick kits. We did the spring foraging and being aware, tick aware, and then also taking care of all members of your pack. So making sure that we're taking care of our pets and our families and being tick aware. One of the things that we've seen in our area, we too had a very wet spring. We also have had warmer winters. So we're seeing species of ticks that we don't normally see here in Wisconsin. Generally, a lot of the ticks that the southern part of the United States worry about, we don't, because we get so bitterly cold. But with warmer winters, these ticks are actually showing up here or able to winter here. So this is an area that we know directly impacted by climate change that we're seeing. Next slide, please. These are the other two materials we developed. This is the sample of our climate change poll that we shared with our community. So doing the risk perception and the climate health literacy. There's a second page to it, but that's just the example. And then we also did a message with chat, and this was related to air quality, and it's paired with the American Lung Association. So we used a link that was shared with people. We shared this on our Facebook page. We also shared it on our health department website, and we sent it out via email to all our email users. So just some examples of the materials that were developed through this grant. I think there's one more slide. Yep, and this is our education table. This is done at our House of Wellness site in the Wisconsin Dells area. We took this to a couple of different of our locations and provided the QR code to our survey. We had handouts and materials available there. And this was also the board that we shared at the block party as well. So this is just an example. I do have my contact information on there. So if you do have any questions, you can certainly reach out to me, email me, and I'd be happy to hear from you.
All right, so we will now go into, I know we're over, but I'm just checking. I'm not sure if you can, but let's just give a round of applause for our speakers. Thank you so much, Dana, Pam, and Claire. I'm looking for additional questions in the chat, ladies. I see that all of you went ahead and answered all of the questions that was in the chat. Pam, if you can share your contact information in the chat, all of that information will also be in the chat for the audience. Just to recap again, that we will be sending out a recording, the contact information, and the presentations for our speakers either Friday or Monday. So again, everyone that registered for the call will receive the webinar recording, all 3 presentations, and the contact information. Please utilize these ladies. They're subject matter experts. They're doing the work. I'm 1000% sure they're willing to talk to other tribes, other organizations, other health departments about what's working well for you if you're interested. And I also just want to note for Ms. Dana, I'm not sure if you saw the comment for someone in the chat that they were currently in DC, from Miss Debbie, who mentioned that they're currently in DC and they had the opportunity to meet with some Congress members about introducing a bipartisan legislation to provide flexibility at Department of Interior to support the efforts of tribes to protect seeds that hold cultural significance to them and to support traditional farming activities. So I'm also going to share her contact information for anyone else. So if you all are looking for any additional resources, please include them in the evaluation. So while I am combining all resources mentioned in the chat, I can include those as well. But thank you all again. Excellent job, everyone. And I'm hoping that you all drink some water, grab a snack, smile, love on yourself, and just enjoy the holidays. Thank you for everyone that stayed over. My heart is filled. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.